You're listening to
Don't Take This Personally, a podcast about the business of creativity.
We are your hosts, wedding photographers, entrepreneurs, and friends, Cami Oliveria
And Gabe Conover. Now let's get into it.
Let's get into it. And don't take it personally, whatever we're about to say.
Yes.
Don't. Do not take this personally. Okay, welcome back, you guys. We took a month off. We brought you some shorty episodes, some quickies, Gabe and Cami quickies. We brought some of those to you. And now we're back with another guest episode. And what's kind of fun is we were on their podcast. If you listen to this and you're planning a wedding or just want to hear Gabe and I talk more because you can't get enough, you can check out their podcast, the Big Wedding Planning Podcast, where Gabe and I did a little special, you ask, we answered questions about wedding photography. So listen, that'll be fun. And now they're with us to answer our question.
This is our first podcast double date.
It is a podcast double date. Okay, so I just want them to take it away. Christy, will you start? Tell us about yourself.
Hello, my name is Christy Matthews, and I'm a wedding planner, and I co-host and co-produce a wedding planning podcast, as you just mentioned. And I would say, Nat, we're recording in the busiest time for weddings. So
yeah, we're psycho.
We're here, and we're really excited to be here. And also, we were shot by Cami a couple weeks ago, and it was a fucking delight.
It was really fun.
Now you are a wedding planner, yes?
Yes, certified wedding planner, and I have my own company, Christy Matthews Events, and I was based in Dallas, and now I'm in Phoenix. Weddings are all over the place. The reason we met Cami is because I had one in San Diego recently.
Oh, wow, that's cool. And then how long have you been doing it?
Oh my gosh, I was going to give that number, but 2000... what was it, Michelle, that I started working for you?
You're as old as Santiago is. And he's almost 14. He'll be 14 next month.
Yeah. So I got my certification and was officially planning weddings myself about 13 years now.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. Jeez.
Amazing.
Okay, Michelle, your turn.
Hello. Hi, I am, my name is Michelle Martinez. I am also a wedding planner. We have an acronym. It's CWC. That would be Certified Wedding Consultant. Ooh. But in layman's terms, I'm a wedding planner, and I went to school for it. And I am located in California, originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I do weddings all over Cali. Oh, and I've been doing it freaking forever. Since 2002. And currently my husband's pouring me a glass of bourbon. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Nice of
that's
him.
Really nice.
What a guy. Oh,
hello.
What a cutie pie.
Hi.
Oh, what
Cami
a cutie patootie.
So you're cute. He's cute, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cuter with the bourbon.
Yeah.
Wow. With the bourbon. Sorry, that was okay. You don't edit this. Sorry. Okay. So
we really don't.
Hey.
They'll love it.
Anywho's, yeah. So yeah, wedding planner, just always been around events forever. Even when I was a teenager, my dad had a limo service and I worked for him,
that's awesome.
Talking to all the brides. So yeah. Excited to be here.
So you said you're originally from San Francisco Bay Area. Where are you now?
I'm a little further, I'm just a little past Sacramento in a place called El Dorado Hills.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
A place where you can afford a nice home as opposed to the Bay Area.
It sounds like a TV show, right?
It does.
It really does.
A TV show neighborhood.
Have you guys seen the latest episode of El Dorado Hills?
Yeah. The Real Housewives of El Dorado Hills.
El Dorado Hills. Yeah. Oh my God, so good.
Yeah.
Oh and so wait, tell me how your two's path crossed.
Your two's
path. What was I trying to say? How did you two meet?
It was a dual path.
Yeah.
It was on Tinder.
It was.
Yes, I knew it.
It was pre-Tinder. It was even pre. What's the one everybody has their resumes?
Dude, it was
LinkedIn.
It was
LinkedIn,
2007.
I mentioned the LinkedIn connection because I sent her a hard copy of my resume, which was not a resume. It was like, this is where I went to college.
This is precious.
In the mail in a manila envelope. I mean, it really was like, here, person who does not have, she did not even have a call out for assistance. It was a fully unsolicited that I was looking to be like, what am I going to be when I grow up? Even though I was an adult by that time, and wanted to work for a wedding planner, and found Michelle somehow. I can't even remember. And she had her own business in Emeryville, which was just across the bridge. And I sent my information, and then I cold called, and like, long story short, I ended up working as a intern for her in her home office. And she was kind of a one-woman show with all the weddings that she was doing and the admin. And so I started working for her that way. And then through that became certified myself, and she hired me as an associate planner. And so, working together with those dynamics for a couple of years until she moved, and then I moved, and then we rebranded her company, and I was a part of that, but then I moved again. And so I started my own company. And at that point, when we were both living out of California, that's when we started the podcast together. So
what made you want to do that?
That was all Michelle.
The podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have this running joke, but it's like real. Like, I'm always the one that's like, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do that. Oh my God. What about this? And she's always like, no. And then she'll say like, maybe, to the third one. So, she kind of keeps me, she'll keep me a little grounded. But yeah, I've been doing weddings for so long, and we were both living in different states, and my kids were super young, and I was like listening to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, there's not really any good podcasts about weddings. They're all kind of shitty, and, although I had already pitched to her, like, let's have this big, huge platform. It'll be a digital wedding planning and blah, 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 before all that was out there. And she's like, no.
Well, this is out of nowhere. I mean, this is like, we're both doing our own thing, and I'm
and she was doing a lot more weddings at the time because my kids were super little. So I was living in Boston at the time. So I just didn't have a lot of weddings. And I was like, what can I be doing? How can I be doing wedding stuff without like being at a wedding every weekend? Cause my children are small.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gabe's
and I was primary caregiver because my husband traveled a lot for work. So I said, well, what about if we did a podcast? All we would have to do is talk. Like, all you'd have to do is talk. I'll figure out everything. And she's like, all right.
And this was over 6 years ago, like inception of how is this going to work? And podcasts have changed a lot, and podcasts have changed many industries since this time. And there were a couple wedding podcasts, but they were scripted, and one person being like, how to execute a wedding day rehearsal here. And it wasn't conversational. And we set out with the goal of like, let's be ourselves, because that's what we know best, but how to be down to earth and like bust up some of this wedding industry machine bullshit that feels like it's feeding people false expectations about like best day ever, most perfect day ever, all of that. Like, we know that that's not a real thing, but we also, I had recently been married myself. So you kind of know like, oh, the industrial complex part of this is very toxic. So let's see what we can do let's see if anybody wants to hear what we think about it and what we think about wedding planning from that perspective, which I think now is much more readily available.
Can you elaborate on that?
The industrial complex we're talking about. I think without naming names, at the time, like let's say, imagine 6 years ago, there were a couple of websites that were and still are in existence, but where brides, and this is, you talked about how the wedding industry has changed. One of the ways is that it's not so bride centric anymore.
Yep.
Largely in part, and something but very much about is like wedding and marriage equality. And so with the legalization of same-sex weddings in our country, in my opinion, many things have changed for the better. But let's imagine 6 years ago, and that had, was still about to happen, very new, but there were a couple blogs, a couple websites that brides would go to mind fuck themselves of like, oh, I must have that. And I must have this. And it has to be like this. And I'm comparing my wedding to these beautiful, skinny, white, heteronormative couples. And it must look like that. And if it doesn't, I'm not happy. I'm embarrassed. I'm going to turn into an asshole for the next year while I try to get my bridesmaids to lose 20 pounds before the big day. Like all this, a million things. But one of the main things was how whitewashed it all is. And also how we were told how much money things are supposed to cost. And that is something Michelle and I wanted. We wanted anybody with any budget to be able to listen to our podcast and get some takeaways and some inspiration.
That. Amazing.
And not be like, but it's a backyard wedding, so it's not as good as those weddings on blah, blah, blah.com.
And although so yours is an industry facing podcast, I would say ours is more consumer based. However, our tag, in every opening episode, you'll hear me say it's for anyone involved in planning a wedding, because not only I think we have an advantage, and you all do too, because you're in California, but I know there's a lot of people listening to your podcast who are industry people that are in other parts of the country who get a lot of these still quite traditional, big, weddings. And I feel like we wanted to talk to our peers as well, because we wanted to say, like, it's okay to freaking, let people know that they can think outside of the box. Maybe you don't want the kind of client that doesn't do that. Maybe you do. And also stop saying bride, and stop saying bride and groom, and stop saying bridal party, and stop saying, because it's let's get away from this bride centric.
It's kind of creepy, right?
It is creepy.
Like the bride worship.
And there's so many freaking, traditions and weddings that date back to like total disgustingness. Like, so, and we could talk on and on. I know you have questions for us.
No,
but like,
this is what our listeners want to hear.
This is literally perfect. I'm obsessed with this.
Yeah. So I feel like that's important. I feel like everybody needs to just kind of like, and it's not, and don't make it like a fucking trend. Like, I'm just talking like this because it's a trend. No, this is the way that things they are. And they need to be, because you, vendor or photographer who is listening, could, without knowing it, turn off a potential client by the wording that's on your website, by the photos that you're showing, by the way that you're answering your emails and your phone calls, and you may not have that intention.
Yeah. There's assumptions made too. And just a note from like our listeners, let's say, are mostly people planning their weddings. The idea that like you're a bride or you're a groom, or this is your time, it has an expiration date, because it's once your wedding is over, then what? Like, let's not define ourselves by that we're planning a wedding. So we try to encourage our listeners, and and as vendors too, we want to work with the people who are like whole people. Like, they're not just like wedding all day long wedding. It's the most important thing. I'm emailing you at 2 a.m. about my wedding because I have nothing. I'm not talking about anything else. That's a turn off. And at a certain point in our careers, we hope that we can spot those. They're kind of red flags a little bit in inquiries and like interviews at the beginning, to be like, oh, this person is 100% weddings all the time. And that's maybe not what I'm all about. I don't want to be a part. Like, I don't know. It just is a little bit like, we want to encourage people, like, it's your whole life ahead of you. The wedding is it's just a party. It's really fun.
It's the gateway to the marriage.
Yeah. It's a gateway.
And be the best day of your life.
And if wedding planning is super challenging, Michelle and I feel like sometimes we like bank on our own marriages in this way, because we're like, if you think wedding planning is hard, just wait till you're married and your husband gets a job across the country and you have decisions are way harder. This is wedding planning. This should be the fun stuff. Yeah. Don't freak out.
It's a celebration.
Yeah. Keep your eye on the prize. It's not all about this one day. And we kind of felt like, are we wrong to be saying that on a wedding planning podcast? Are we shooting ourselves?
But I mean, because I think we've all worked with couples and at weddings where you can tell that they're like probably more excited about having a wedding than they are about being married, or they don't understand. Like, so I love that message. And I think it's really important. Like, my wedding was so fun. It was not the best day of my life, but it was so fun. And like, I think that's how it should be. Like, it shouldn't be the best day of your life. And if it is, that might be a problem.
Yeah, the memories I have created post-wedding are way more important to me than my wedding day.
Yes.
So I love how you said that. That was a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But you're spending a shit ton of money. So let's talk about the logistics and let's make sure you're spending the money in the right ways. That I'm all about.
Yeah.
The shit ton of money is relative too. No matter if you make $30,000 a year or $300,000 a year, your wedding is, the money spent on that is relative to it's a lot of money no matter what, basically.
Yeah. No matter how much money you have, it's a lot of money.
Exactly. Trying to encourage people, like, don't spend it on stuff you don't care about. Spend it on the things that matter to you, and let go of some of the other stuff. Like, just let go. You don't have to have all the things. And that's what I meant about certain websites would encourage. It's where like dreams go to die, because people would see these other weddings, or like the Pinterest weddings, and I would say a million other, blogs that were a really big deal, and kind of still are at a certain time, but I think they're becoming less relevant, of like, if I'm going to have a wedding, I have to have a 4-tier cake. I have to have a centerpiece on every table. I just have to. And now it's the industry and the consumers are moving away from that. And I think that's great and refreshing. Like, do what you want. Do you. Your wedding should be a reflection of the two of you, not everything you think you're supposed to do.
Totally. Just now that sparked a question out of curiosity. Do you have any like feelings about how much money people spend on their weddings? Like, is it like this?
Yeah, we do.
Well, because Gabe and I talk a lot that we have some confusing feelings about the industry.
We have a lot of conflicting feelings about
but then we love what we do. So it's so confusing.
Well, you as a business person, right? You as a professional who makes a living off of what you do for your trade thinks about it much differently than our clients do.
Yeah.
Right. And I think being a wedding planner and being a photographer in that aspect is quite different, because, or any other type of vendor, because especially being in the San Francisco Bay Area, I can tell you that there is a lot of vendors that will be like, yeah, I won't touch a wedding if their budget for my service is under $15K. I just won't. So just don't even call me. Cool. Good for you, buddy.
Yeah.
And I get it.
Well,
I get it. Like, you have your reasons.
Yeah.
And I have a minimum as a wedding planner. I do as well. And so, but what's interesting is with the podcast, it's like we are talking to people who have like, a freaking $5,000 overall wedding budget.
Right.
And to them, that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, dude, I would never have, like, I'm just giving people dinner and we're dancing, for $5,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I had to scrape that up. So I do need my mom to do the flowers.
Yeah.
And my cousin who, is great with a camera is going to be the photographer. So it's interesting because it's
opened
all
up
relative.
our perspective.
Yeah.
And it was already pretty open, but it's been, doing the podcast and talking to so many listeners across the country, but also the world, has been eye-opening. Like, if you only have 5,000, that's a lot to you. I shouldn't even say only. How can you best spend that to have the day that you want? What corners can be cut? That really is a real question we have to ask. Wow. And how can we be helpful with the podcast, no matter what? A lot of things don't cost money. They're more about the experience, like running a great rehearsal, for example.
Yeah.
We can talk about that in an episode. How to run a great rehearsal, even if you don't have a planner, even if your officiant is not a professional and it's like your cousin who you love and said that they would do this. So we've tried to find ways to make our podcast the most helpful to the most people.
Wow.
And that has, made us kind of like the industry more.
But people listening to this podcast want to hear.
Want to hear what we don't like about photographers.
Okay. No, that's just us.
No, that's just us personally. So
we're going to make them listen to it.
I've been personally stoked. I think Gabe too. I always am weary of not wanting to speak for both of us.
Yeah, we have to be careful of that.
We have to be careful of that because we're our own individual people.
Even though we're very similar.
Even though we're the same person. I am so freaking stoked to talk to planners because Gabe and I have both had experiences at weddings where planners are just like, God, we love working with you guys because photographers are just such fucking divas. Or like they're just like, I know you guys like will like treat people well and not be difficult and not think
prioritize the right things.
Yeah. And so it just got me thinking, like, what do planners think about all the vendors?
Yeah, I would say just kind of start with like, what are your biggest pet peeves specifically with photographers?
Yeah, like I just want people to listen to this and maybe walk away and be like, man, I do those things and it's annoying and maybe I can do better. So like, do you like and it can be spicy if you want.
Literally say anything. We don't care about offending people.
Spicy moment. Okay, we don't care about
I mean, I don't care about offending people.
I just really want to know, like, do you have any pet peeves? Let's start with photographers. The bulk of our listeners are photographers. What do you think? Like, what's annoying? What do you love that they do? Is there anything that works really well? Is there shit that's annoying, etc.? I'm so curious.
I think for me, like, I'm such a frigging people pleaser, but like, honestly, with every wedding professional I work with, and I just want us all to like have fun, get along, and like work in harmony for our clients. Like, seriously, Agreed. It makes all our lives easier. However, that doesn't always happen. And I think one thing that I work really, really hard on is our wedding day schedule. Like, I work really hard on this fucking thing. Okay. And I try very hard to consider the photographer, the videographer, the florist,
everyone,
the venue. Like, I work so hard to consider them. Have I walked a wedding day in all of their shoes? I have not. And I'm very well aware of it. So when I work to create a wedding day schedule, it's with my couple and I'm advising them. When I send it out a month before the wedding and say, hey guys, here's the first draft. Take a look when you have time. I totally get it. It's fucking August and everybody's busy, but like, just put 20 minutes on your calendar, look it over and then respond back to me. Cause I'm open to your suggestions, your requests, whatever it is. What really irks me is that they'll just like email back and say, thanks, received. And then once it's like the week of the wedding and we have a plan in place and they decide they're going to meet with the couple on Zoom and change everything and tell the couple all these crazy things that makes the couple come back and like, be like, oh, he said that this is not enough time and that this needs to be done this way. And like, we need to change this and stresses out the couple as well. That is very uncool. Like,
it affects
just
other vendors too. Hair and makeup has to be done by 11. I'm not sure, why you said it has to be done by 12. Like, these kinds of things, you have to go back and rework multiple timelines. Yeah. If the photographer never took the time to look at the timeline in the first place.
Right. And I know a lot of wedding planners are not like, I know that a lot of wedding planners are assholes and like think that their way or the highway. I don't like, and so I can't talk to those type of planners if you all are working with those, but I can only talk to me and how I do things. And like, when I send you a schedule a month before and be like, let's totally like talk about this. Let's do it, dude. Like, let's work together before we stress out the client who's getting mixed messages from like so many wedding professionals, because part of my job is to take all of that off my client's shoulders, right? That month before the wedding. Yep. I want all those questions, all that stuff coming to me instead of our clients. I know you need to talk to them directly. It's important. But logistically, like, some of that stuff can be done amongst us.
I 100% agree with that. And I'm so glad you said that. Like, every time a planner emails me, I respond right away, like within 24 hours. I read the whole timeline. And when they say, let's hop on a call, I hop on a call with them like as soon as I can. And if my couple has a planner, I make sure to like tell my couple, like, I'm as accessible to you as you need me to be, but since you have a planner, I'm gonna like go over logistics with them because that makes your life easier.
Like that's the point. That's why you hired them.
That's the whole point. So I
Yeah.
really like that you said that. That's really shitty that more photographers don't like respect that part of your job.
Yeah, and I would honestly disagree with you about one thing, Michelle, not what you think. I actually don't think that the bulk of planners are like these bitchy people that just like won't work with your schedule. I don't think that, because I respond very similarly to Cammie, and I'll respond really quickly and I'll be like very specific, like, hey, can you just extend this by 15 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And every time it's someone I have not worked with before, they will immediately respond and be like, oh my gosh, like, thank you. That was so helpful.
Yeah. Or just like, done. Easy. Here is the revised copy.
Yeah. I never, ever have a problem with planners. And so I think that like, it's easy for like, I think earlier you were saying like, oh, like the bitchy girl with a clipboard, like that's what planners are. And that's a stereotype. And I actually like, for the most part, I just don't deal with that. And I think that stereotype has gone away a bit, but people just kind of keep doing like, or assuming it because people just love to assume that everyone's out to get them.
Yeah. And the TV shows.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The TV shows.
TV shows never help a wedding planner's reputation.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Modern media and stuff, they just love to make people assume that everyone is out to get them and that everyone has negative intentions. It's
someone's
so
a villain.
Obnoxious.
Yeah.
Yes. Terrible.
But if I could be a villain for a second, then
Please.
I can give you one thing that annoys me about some photographers on the day of.
Be a villain.
And that has to do with the timeline that I know is not going to be perfect, but I run a pretty tight ship because I'm trying to make it to where we get to all the things that the couple has told me that they want to do at the end of the night. So that's why things are lined up. There's a reason for everything. But if a photographer takes the couple away and it's for much, much longer than was on the timeline or kind of agreed upon mutually as a vendor team, and also the couple themselves, if I can't find them, we're supposed to do something, the DJ's making announcements and everyone's like looking at the door and no one is there because the photographer said, well, I promise you we'll be back in the lobby by 7:45. I promise she'll be there. They'll be there. They're going to look amazing. And then 7:58, 8:15, like, where the fuck are you on this entire venue property? Now I'm going to need to get a golf cart and come like hunt you down.
Yeah, we actually took a car and went down the street.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Did I not tell you we went off site?
Yes, that is very frustrating because there's so many other things that get like knocked down. I mean, it's like dominoes. And at the end of the night, if we don't get to something because literally the music had to shut off at a certain time, it's like, well, your photographer took you for a half an hour. I don't know how, like, I can't magically make time reappear.
Like you can't create more time.
Exactly. And so this problem would never happen if the timeline was looked at carefully ahead of time and you, the photographer, might have said like, there's no way we can get this shot in 10 minutes. We have to go all the way up to the roof. I've done this before. It's going to take 30. What can we do? And then I would have been able to rework
Switch things around.
Yeah. It's about communication on the front end so that neither one of us is panicking or like hiding, just like missing on the wedding day. It would be the same if you needed me and you were like, I thought you hired a wedding planner. Where is she? I haven't seen that wedding planner in an hour.
Yeah.
Like that would be a problem. So
side note, if there's a wedding where I can drive a golf cart, it's a maze. Like I love that.
So the wine country.
It's always the wine. Yeah, it's always the winery.
So fun.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm like the opposite of that.
I know.
I am I get so much anxiety that I'm like taking away this couple from the party of their lives. And I'm just like, I'm constantly checking my phone. Just like, is it time? Should we be done? Should we be done? I'm like, and I normally am done before we're supposed to be done because I love it.
If
I just want you guys to party. Like, go freaking party.
15 minutes. I'll have them back in 10.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
exactly
very important.
And it just makes me uncomfortable. I'm like, how do these photographers go around doing this and then come back and enter into the reception with confidence? Like, I would be ashamed of myself.
I would be too, actually. I would not be able to emotionally recover from that.
It blows my mind. But they do it. Okay, cool. Anything else off the top of your minds?
Yeah, about photographers, like how photographers can be better. besides communication and about timeline and not taking longer than they say they will?
No, I think in general, no. You do, Christy?
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to say at the top, we talked about like maybe, egos or like for the vendor team, like this is not about us at all. We're all on the same team. Like Michelle said, we try to foster that, like we're all the help, basically. We're not the stars of the show. We're the stage manager in the back and like the guy with the rigging and the headphones. Like that is what all the vendor team are. So we want to work together. And when you mentioned, well, I think we weren't recording yet, but like all the, any photographer that like thinks it's all about them or the ego gets in the way and they're hard to work with. In my head, I was like, that's not the photographer, that's the DJ. Always, if there's a big ego, and that does not mean every DJ has one, but if I'm working
fascinating
with somebody that I'm like, that fucking guy is not listening to me.
That fucking guy.
Yeah.
He's off.
You agree,
he's
Michelle?
gone off
Yes.
book. He's gone off book.
Script. He's off script.
Wait,
yeah.
And he's like, this is my party. I'm going to take it in my hands. I know what I'm doing.
And
You're
I
like,
think this is a club. And you're like,
you're
it's
up
not a
there
club.
on your stage. You're not looking at the catering kitchen right now,
This is
mister.
news to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
That prime rib is cold because you insisted on
We are
playing the
behind.
full version.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, like, get off the mic and stop doing that thing where you like take the mic into the crowd and try to do a thing that's not on the timeline. I've literally been standing there before when a DJ does that, and it's something that's going to take like 15 minutes. He's like, we're going to play the shoe game. This is a surprise for the couple. And no bad against the shoe game. We've done it before, but if it's not there, then they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And DJs are the only, I can say this with almost no exceptions, are the only vendor that will act like straight. And I'm all about like, again, like we're all working together, but a DJ is the only vendor who has ever straight looked at me and just been like, I'm not doing that, or I'm going to do it anyway. Where you're like, excuse me?
Like what they think it's like their party?
Because they have the microphone and they can dictate, you know what I mean? It's
and
like,
usually it's a guy and I'm, it's like a cool guy who's wearing like a cool outfit. And I'm, again,
a cool outfit. You mean like a blingy DJ outfit? That looks
I mean like the cool, let's say like a cool LA DJ who's got like cool sneakers on and like it, I don't know, just it's always if I have a problem, it's almost always the DJ who will just look at, I'll be like,
also they're like, I'm like, dude, we have to be out of here. We have to have last dance at exactly this time. We haven't done cake cutting yet. You have to get me there. Like,
stop acting like I'm a buzzkill. Yeah. I'm a wedding planner. I'm trying to do this for the couple. It's not me.
This is so interesting.
And the photographer has an 8-hour hard stop time, or we're going to be paying $350 an hour. And the couple wants their photo cutting their fucking cake.
And why am I explaining all of this? Why am I having to justify why you need to play the first dance song now? It's on the timeline. You agreed to it. I gave you a list of announcements. I put fucking pronunciation in my announcements for you. I will do it phonetically. And still they will butcher a name because they didn't look and they think they know. And then the couple, no joke, the couple's mom, a mother of the bride before has like shot me a look like, how did he just say my name? And it's like, why did you let him say my name wrong?
Like
or whatever
many times
it is.
Have they said the wrong name, Christy?
Yeah, or said for the first time as husband and wife when it's fucking two wives. Yeah, I've had that. And you guys, it's mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. Mind-blowing.
Anyway. Why are DJs like this?
I don't know.
Because they don't want to be wedding DJs. They want it to like, this is like plan B.
They want it to be like a club DJ or some shit.
Plus they might be drinking.
Yes. Or doing blow in their car outside before the wedding starts. And I'm like, I see what you're doing, sir.
That's definitely happening over here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The amount of people I've seen do blow at weddings is shocking.
I'm constantly asked for
really.
Yes, I have I have a little fanny pack around me all the time. That do you have blow in there?
Oh my god! Really?
No, I don't. Everyone is doing so much more blow than I realize.
Well, I also act like I'm drunk 24/7 or on drugs, so it's okay.
On drugs,
yeah.
Okay, so wait. On that note, though, I'm really curious. Do you find more of a problem with vendors when they're expensive vendors or like cheap borderline friend vendors. Because my question for you guys was going to be like, do you have a hard time when couples don't have a huge budget? So they're like having their friends do stuff. And we all know, we've seen the shit that can happen when like the photographer who doesn't know what they're doing, like messes up the whole day or whatever. So I'm like, or is it like these higher end vendors that are just like difficult? Like what? I'm really curious about that. When do you have a harder time with vendors? Like when they are borderline friends or like more expensive?
Well, Cammie, because I have a certain minimum to meet now, I don't really work with a lot of frienders anymore, but I did back in the day.
Yeah. Well, like couples who like don't have not necessarily like you are their friender, but like maybe they didn't have a huge budget.
No, yeah. I do remember, and I think this is part of, okay, so when it's a lower budget wedding and there's a lot of DIY stuff going on, and there's like, oh, my friend, graduated from, Academy of Arts and like is a photographer, and like, no, my other friend's a club DJ. He's amazing. It'll be his first wedding, but this is the kind of music that I want.
What do you say?
I'm always like, okay, great. So it is a challenge.
Yeah.
Because it's funny because these couples want like this is the kind of DJ I want at my wedding, because I want it to be more like a party, except that they do still want some of the quote traditional things happening. Like, we'll do a sit down dinner. Oh, we'll have 6 toasts. Right. I do want a cake cutting, and it's crazy. I know it's weird, but I do want a bouquet toss.
See, this is what we were talking about on your podcast with the question about the word photojournalistic. Like people think they want something, but it's not actually what they want.
Yeah. So it is challenging, because it's not that I'm not open to working with them. I have many times, but it does make it like, okay, excuse me, Mr. Club DJ, could you please make this announcement? And they're like, what do you want me to say? Well, could you just say like, we're moving in for dinner now? Here, like, and then I end up doing it. And I'm like, dude, I need to be back here and make sure that the guests are moving and that the little lot. So it's quite challenging. It doesn't always turn out great. It doesn't always turn out great.
If it's and this is, I think, a fair assessment. If the photographer is expensive and is charging a lot of money, then usually they're a pro and they're very experienced. They have a portfolio that backs it up. The couple hired them for a reason. The couple has the money, or this was a big priority for them. So that's why. And even if I don't like vibe with that photographer, or if I think like this photographer is a little big for their britches, just as a professional, I can count on the day being smooth execution between the two of us. I might not want to sit down with them and have a drink after the wedding is over. And that is like kind of worst case scenario in terms of like a personality thing. But if it's a photographer that is charging a substantial amount of money, over sometimes what I'm being paid, then I expect the day to go smoothly in terms of like, I'm not going to have to, and usually it does. Like, okay. Yes. It's so for certain vendors, that matters more, but I wouldn't say we could say like frienders or new to the profession vendors are harder to work with. It doesn't go like, it's not on that line.
Yeah.
I mean, some DJs are very expensive and they're very difficult to work with. Yeah. Some venue managers, like the venue might be extremely particular. And as a planner, you're like, oh, this is stressful. I'm gonna have to follow all these rules and make sure that everyone's like doing what they're supposed to be doing, so we don't get in trouble contractually with the venue.
Right.
And there's like a vendor overlord or a venue like manager that like sits back for the whole event and they don't help.
Yeah.
And they're not there to like answer questions, but they're just watching to see if you like scratch a wall, or if that light that we said don't turn on gets turned on, or that can also be like intimidating.
Yeah.
And that usually comes with a high price tag.
Yeah.
It's $10,000 a day for you to rent this winery. Someone's going to be there like staring at you the whole time, but it means that things are professional also.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well,
I found that fascinating.
Yeah, I had no idea. I never would have known a lot of those things.
I feel like you just spilled the tea on DJs. And now that I've seen it, I can't unsee
well,
it.
To be honest, like a DJ, in my opinion, can make or break a wedding very easily, way more than most vendors can, because they control, like you said, they literally control the reception.
And it can be so awkward.
So they're guest facing, you know?
Yeah. And the party relies on them in, the second half of the day. So it makes sense. And like that, my DJ vendor list is so curated. We curated, your favorite word, Christy. Because I've worked with so many that just have like literally made weddings so much worse.
Yeah.
The vendor list from another vendor is such an amazing resource, because if somebody hired you, Gabe, because they love you and they trust you, and you give them like, here's all my favorites, like what a great place to start. If you love Gabe, you're going to love all of his picks, because they work together really well on the wedding day. That's
in
huge.
Harmony, like Michelle said.
Lately, most of my weddings have been with like the same kind of group of vendors, because my couples have been trusting me so much over the last year, going off my vendor list. And then it's the best, because I'm like, I know how to work with this videographer. I freaking work so closely with this florist. I know what they want.
Okay, but wait, this. I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
How often are you recommending a wedding planner or month of coordinator to a client?
A lot.
Every time.
Really?
A lot. Mm-hmm. So I would say, well, not every time, because sometimes it's Gabe and I have talked about, like, in the price point we're in now, a lot of our weddings are now coming from planner referrals.
Correct.
Yes.
So that is kind of the stage, I think, of career we are in right now, where like a lot of our couples are coming because like they hired the full service planning and then they connected them,
and it's
to
like
us.
A huge production,
and then it's like more of a production. But I do encourage, if they don't already have a planner, I borderline require it now, that they buy a planner, that they
buy a planner,
purchase a planner, no, that they book
store.
a planner or day of coordinator, because I'm just so tired of also having to be a coordinator, and I usually am,
because it does fall on us. If it does fall on us.
Yeah.
I've literally had people constantly would come up to me, people that, like, when they don't have a planner, and they're just like, okay, Gabe, what are we doing next?
Yeah,
and
what's next?
What?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, I've been showing up to weddings, and bridesmaids will be like, wait, so Cammie, when does our ride get here? Like, how are we getting to the venue? I'm like, what do you think I am? I'm the photographer.
Right.
Like, I'm down.
I did bring my limo though. Yes.
Thank you for reminding me. Help, but like, I don't know that. You tell me, how are you getting to the venue?
I will say though that Cammie and I get the second bulk of our referrals or our bookings from client referrals. And when I do get a client referral, typically I'm the first person that gets booked. And so a lot of people will end up hiring planners for me. Like, I got booked for this wedding in Santa Barbara, and I'm like, one of my favorite wedding planners literally lives in Santa Barbara. Like, that's where she's based. Like, hire her. Perfect. They did. And it was just like this. It does happen, I think, a lot more maybe for us that we're referring planners, just because we're so
I'm
referral
happy to hear
based.
that.
Yeah. Cool.
Good.
Okay. Well, let's move on from the juice.
That was
because we got it.
That was some fun, spicy moments. That was fun.
I guess so. We have a couple of things we want to go over. Let's go with this next question. What do you wish that more people knew about wedding planning? Or like, I guess, like, because we do have a lot of our clients and just like friends of our clients that listen to our podcast as well. What do you wish people knew about the wedding planning process?
Yeah, like, is there anything you wish you're like, because I know there are things I wish I could tell couples like about photography. So like, is there something that you're like, man, I wish people would just think of this? Or like things that you maybe can't say to your clients because they're your clients, but you're like, man, I really wish people would like not do this, or like, I really wish people would do this, or and does that like spark anything for you? Does like anything come to the front of mind?
What do I wish clients knew, or other wedding professionals?
Clients.
Well, we're gonna ask both, but like clients. So like, because we have people like he was saying like our couples like listen to this too. It's which is so fun. But like, is there anything you wish? I mean, it's why you freaking started a podcast about it. Like, what
we have 5 years of things we wish.
I know.
So just give us like the biggest things.
Yeah,
then.
like what's like the first thing that comes to mind? Like, is it like, I wish people would just hire a planner?
I mean, that's mine.
Oh, definitely hire a planner. But I think I wish people, I would say couples getting married, knew how to kind of just trust and let go a little bit. Right.
So good.
Yeah. Just like I think again, because we're dealing with so much money, and they're dealing with opinions of others, often like parents, or, they're someone in their wedding party or their siblings or whoever it is, that they overthink things that really don't need to be overthought. And if you're hiring a planner, someone especially who has a lot of experience, right? I'm not talking about a brand new planner, although shout out to all you newbies. I think there's a reason that you hire them, and it's not just the day of. It is all of the planning. And so trusting that person, once you feel a good connection and you know that they understand your vision or your style or your personality, whatever it is just to kind of, trust and let them kind of lead certain parts of it.
I really, really love that.
Wonderful
I think
advice.
a wedding is unique because it is so much money. Michelle, we're dealing with money. We're dealing with emotions. We're dealing with family shit that comes up after years of nobody talking about anything. And two people have decided that they're going to make this really big decision together. And sometimes it's the first time that those two people have actually worked together on a project. I mean, if it's two professionals in their 30s, a wedding might be the first time they like actually have to collaborate and like work with their partner for this common goal. So it's an intersection of a lot of things happening. It's happening to you, the couple, once, right? You're maybe twice. Maybe this is your second wedding, but generally it's their first wedding. We are professional project managers. So if we can take a little bit of the like wedding planner out of it, it's a job where it's project management. So your project, your wedding is one of many projects I am managing at any given time.
Yeah.
So that's with trusting your vendors. I think, especially with your planner, you need to also respect like a boundary of like really read the contract when you hire a planner, because it goes into detail, or it should go into detail about exactly what you can expect in terms of communication, responsiveness, consumables, like here's a timeline, here's a wedding day ceremony layout, here's what I'm going to do for floor plan, here's how many meetings we're going to have about design. I'll answer emails Monday through Friday during these times. What I'm trying to say is like your wedding planner she or he is doing more than just your wedding.
Yeah.
So keeping those expectations like realistic. This is a professional. You hired a professional. You wouldn't call your banker. You wouldn't email your family, real estate agent at 2 a.m. and expect an answer by 8 a.m. So because something's driving you crazy. So trusting the logistics with a professional takes some careful consideration before you hire them, about what the expectations of this relationship are, because wedding planners, I love it when I love my clients and I want to like you. I want to go out with you if once the wedding is over and we stay, we're still in each other's lives. But at the time, I think wedding planners can be used a little bit too much as like a sounding board or a whipping boy a little bit for everything the client is dealing with gets kind of like thrown at the planner. And I don't think that's it's not tenable. It's not whether it's fair or unfair. It's just not going to work for very long.
I think it's interesting. People forget that this is like our jobs. And I don't know if it's because we're a part of their personal life and they're a part of our professional life. So that's like an interesting
I like
division.
Yes. It's a very personal experience they're going through.
Yeah. And
but it's not ours. We're not going through it.
I love the way you said that.
Yeah, me too.
Also with wedding planners, we tend to take on this like fairy godmother, like, oh, I'll make it. Yep. I'll make it happen. And for a lot of people, most people, it's the only time of their life that they feel like they kind of have a personal assistant. So it's like, I'll just tell my wedding planner. And then we get an email, this is part of my job. Like, can you look into X, Y, and Z? And also make sure that this is happening. And by the way, I changed my mind on this. And they just send an email like that. I will handle those things if it's within my job description.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people get used to that. Like I'll send it to my wedding planner. I'll ask my wedding planner. And like I said at the beginning of this, there's an expiration date, your wedding. After that, I'm not, you disappear, I'm not in your life anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful to respect the boundaries. Don't get too invested in your relationship with your wedding planner.
This is also incredible advice for every vendor listening, to not get overly invested in your couples too. Like, as someone who struggles with boundaries and who, my thing is like, people feel like they're friends with me and that makes them feel really comfortable in front of the camera. And I use that closeness to do my job well.
Right.
A lot of really uncomfortable boundaries have been blurred for me. So I like that pep talk, even for vendors.
Huge importance on the contract, like that, to really have a detailed contract that you can go back to and be like, yeah, it says right here, I can't stay an extra 3 hours for free because I like you and we have like a vibe.
Because we have a vibe.
I'm here away from
attacked hearing that.
Yeah. I mean, I just mean like that my contract has evolved through the years. And so is Michelle's. Like, our contracts now are very different than they were when we first started, because you live and you learn and you're like, oh, for the next wedding, I am putting this in my contract, whatever.
Amen.
Email responsiveness, or like hard stop on the wedding day, or something that we learn what we have to adjust. And so the contract
gave me some stuff to think about. Wow.
Very important.
Yeah. Amazing. I feel like I personally got everything I wanted out of this conversation. Gabriel, do you have any final questions?
Think maybe to close, why don't you two just give us a couple of your like career highlights, favorite things that have happened, whether they were at weddings or just being involved in this industry.
Yes. Do you have any special memes you want to share?
Memories.
Like, this wedding was so sick, or like I met, I don't know, just anything that feels like a highlight.
I've made a lot of special friends. That sounds weird. Special friends.
Special friends.
I mean, clearly, two of you are here.
Throughout the couple decades I've been in this industry, I've lost count of how many weddings and events I've done. But I think for me, and you all probably see this now too, like being friends on Facebook or whatever, like you see your clients' families growing, and their kids that are like in frigging, high school now, or, they look just like mom and dad. I love that. I love my industry friends. Like, there's a couple of wedding professionals I work with, and they're my family, and my clients hire them without even hesitating. And they work so hard for me to make sure that my clients are happy and that I am. And I know that they would do anything, you know what I mean? Like, that is invaluable. That really is. And it makes you feel really good. I don't know. Like, I've done some really cool weddings and I've done some really shitty weddings, but
the shitty ones are honestly some of my favorite memories.
Same.
Well, those are the negatives always what sticks with you, unfortunately, such as life, right? Yeah. But I can tell you that a good photographer who shares photos with you and hint, takes awesome photos of you in action that you can use.
Oh yeah. That always gets bonus points with a planner.
God, it's so great because we don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll look back on the photos and be like, oh my God, I forgot. Look at me. Look what I did.
I love that. I love that.
We talk about this a lot. Like, a huge piece of marketing is just being good to your vendors and your planners, and like going above and beyond. Like, if I'm there when a florist is setting up, I'm always trying to get a photo or two of them actually setting up, and the couple ends up liking it too.
No, they love it.
They love their
day.
They love their vendors.
Yes.
They love their vendors.
Yes.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I think one of my career highs in terms of being a wedding planner, the last wedding I did, Cammie, when you came out and met us, that was the third wedding in this family, this Filipino Catholic family that in the real world, I would have no natural connection to, like nothing in common, but I was the roommates with with a guy for many years in San Francisco, and his sister hired me to do her wedding in San Francisco, like a decade ago. And then one of the junior bridesmaids, a cousin, got married like 4 years later, and they hired me, and that was in Lake Arrowhead. And
those
then
are the best.
4 years later, a bridesmaid that was the maid of honor in that wedding was another cousin and the sister of the second bride. She called me for hers, and it was this natural progression. And I'm not exaggerating. It took this third wedding for me to be fully accepted into this family, which is very close, very insular, very generational. Like that, there are aunties and grandmas, and it is like, I mean, aunties on top of aunties, and they all call each other auntie, and they call me auntie now. And
that's the best. One
of the grandmas at this wedding, who's been at all three now, so they know me. She comes up to me, and this is, I had a mask on, but she puts both her hands on my face, like at the end, like as she was leaving. And all these women, by the way, Filipino weddings, full beaded gowns, always beaded sleeves.
Yeah,
I'm pinning roses on them. And my cold hands are like inside of all their beaded dresses before the ceremony. They all know me. She puts her hands on my face and is like, she just is this little old lady. And like, oh, beautiful Christy, thank you so much for another family wedding. You did a great job. And she like almost, would have kissed me if I didn't have a mask on. Yeah. As she's like on her way out. And I remember being like, oh, I'm in. Like after a decade in this family, they finally like trust me. Because at first it was kind of like, who's this planner you hired?
Of course.
And it was a big deal to be a part of that many. I mean, I saw when a woman was pregnant, and then 5 years later, her daughter is a flower girl.
Oh,
and I kind of
calling you auntie.
Yeah. And the next wedding I do will be for one of those flower girls, in terms of this family, because now the generation of, anyway, it was very special to be a part of these big moments. And somewhere like in the back of all these events, I was there pulling some kind of strings to make it happen. And it's a great feeling.
Oh, that's so good. We love that too, because Gabe and I get like a lot of like repeat like family members or friends or whatever, and you get into it with people, and it starts to feel like a different level of fulfilling.
It does. I did a series of 4 siblings weddings within a span of like 3 years,
so
and the last one I was like, oh, it's the Grand Slam.
Yeah,
we did it.
Oh my gosh.
So cool. Thank you both ladies for joining us.
Fun.
This was so fun. Sorry, we're kind of like creeping into the shadows.
I know,
now
as it gets
it's all dark.
Ooh, spooky.
So
like you're camping.
We look spooky. We do look like we could be camping in a tent. And the light from the computer is like our flashlights. We're like telling spooky stories. Well, thank you ladies so much. I just adore the crap out of you.
Yeah,
come back to San
great.
Diego soon.
The feeling
and we'll have
is
more
mutual.
Tequila, and
Good.
this time Gabe will join.
Yes, I will. We'll plan it around.
Gabe, you're not even old enough to drink.
He's got
that doesn't stop me.
He's got a good fake ID. Don't worry. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you again. We will
hopefully
have you on here again someday. Maybe have another.
Yeah.
We would love to. Thank you for having us.
Perfect. Well, peace out, everyone. See you next time.